Welcome to One Big Boat. We're all in this together. A show focused on people and organizations whose work is making a true difference in people's lives. Today, we welcome Billy Starr, founder and chairman of the Pan Mass Challenge.
Hearing people say, I can help with this next year. I had not thought about next year.
He's describing the first charity ride he organized to support cancer research at Dana-Farber. Fast forward to today, and the PMC, as it's known to most, raised $75 million in 2024 and passed the $1 billion mark for its lifetime. Billy is on board to discuss everything PMC. Next, on One Big Boat, we're all in this together. So, you start up in 1980. You all get lost. You finally make it to P-Town. You raise $10,000. And on your bus ride home, you're hearing all these people talk about what you can do next year. And that's when you think it can really kind of happen, right? But when do you think it is going to happen? When do you go from thinking to knowing that the Pan Mass Challenge is going to take off?
Well, take off is a relative term.
Yeah.
I could say to you that in April of 1980, when the epiphany occurred to me while a sunset ride at the Arnold Arboretum in Brookline, that was the commitment. I'm going to do this. But there was no thought to 1981. But based on, honestly, what you just said, hearing people say, I can help with this next year. I had not thought about next year. I thought about this year. I couldn't say that I had particularly articulated in my brain that this is only once, or that this is forever, or that this was something that had potential. I just had, it appealed to me to do it. I'd lost my mother, uncle, and cousin to cancer. I was an athlete, way more than I was a biker. I'd gotten into cycling a little bit around 1977, but it was one of 10 things I did in sport. But I started biking to P-Town, and I just found it attractive. So the whole idea of being an event organizer, doing the logistics, that, for what was obviously a modest event that attracted 36 people, I didn't find that intimidating at all. I didn't think about liability, but I did think about lodging, route, housing, attracting people. But I had no money. And I had no personal money. I had no backing. So, it was just me handing out brochures. Free public service announcements in the Boston Globe. You could see what a media hit this was. I was probably lucky to get 36 people. But nor had it occurred to me that nothing like this existed. Therefore, this would be either attractive or unattractive. Bring it forward to this moment, this second epiphany, if you will. Again, the scene is, it's a beautiful September weekend. And quite frankly, we had nothing but great weather for the first 10 years until we didn't. But it was sunshine. It was in that era. Labor Day was the cut in the season for Cape Cod, believe it or not. There is no cut anymore, right? So being on Labor Day or after Labor Day on the Cape was considered off-season and less traffic in a smaller New England world, right? So again, back to the bus ride home, and I just kept hearing, next year. The people were turned on by it. They thought they could help. They lived through a weekend where the services were so bare bone. It wasn't survival, but it was laughable. But they were good sports. They were probably better athletes. They were probably kind of like me. I honestly couldn't even tell you if we had any female participation in 1980. I don't have a record of who those people were. But I could tell you it was largely male, if not entirely male. So on Sunday night at that point, I had a girlfriend, not the woman I married. And, I went home and I literally said, this is it for me. I'm going to make this thing big. And she looked at me and she said, look, Billy, it was great, but grow up, get a job. And if you knew the relationship, I was like, I'll show you.
Do you still send her cards like, hey, the job search is still ongoing, but I'm still riding on the weekends?
No, but I kept to keep her sister for all 45 years, Amy Bresky, who you've probably grown to know through the years, who does all the lodging. She was my other half for 10 years in terms of, Amy had run a construction company. She had a heart of gold. She was great with logistics, and she was attracted to what I did, or she was a good sport to help me out. But for 10 years, Amy did an awful lot. And I remember when she told me she was going to pull back, I was panicked. And of course, PMC 1990 was considerably, now we're over 1,000 people, over $1 million. It's a real event, however small by today's PMC. But at any rate, there were volunteerism, and she was the quintessential volunteer, became really an important part of building not only a support system, but a reciprocity of a group willing to take certain responsibility, professional volunteerism, which obviously you would need on, what was then a 200-mile, actually year one, 220-mile ride from the Eastfield Mall in Springfield to Provincetown. We moved permanently to Sturbridge in 1981, and we've stayed there until now. As you know, it's announced. This year, our 46th year in Sturbridge will be our last Central Mass ride from Sturbridge. We're moving to Holy Cross in Worcester. That's very exciting. It's a big change, and quite frankly, the biggest change, but in a much smaller event, since we moved to the Mass Maritime Academy from Boy Scouts camps in the Miles Standish Forest in 1985. So, my MO, without, I know we're going to cover a lot of ground, but my MO was I was going to try, and particularly as this event grew, the sport grew. PMC was surfing the curl of the wave, but that guys like us, guys who are over 50, could age well. It was age well with the sport. Was this part of my business model? Not per se, but I got into cycling, and I just thought it was a wonderful new wave for any of those, male, female, whether you were doing field hockey, basketball, soccer, hockey, you name it. You were going to find yourself running or biking. And I ran for 10 years, never liked it. The day I got it. I've never
seen a runner smile.
Yeah, I never liked it. I couldn't wait for it to end. I was looking for the runner's high. I was looking for the chemical, organic high. And but the day I got on a bike, I literally gave up running. And I think, we all know the beauties and the challenges of the respective sports. But, we're looking back now on 45 years, and some of this evidence is really self-evident about who, what, aging well, what your body can handle, sport, competition, technology, camaraderie. Do we bike to eat and drink? Do we eat and drink to bike? Who cares? We keep community alive, which particularly in the last half dozen years with COVID has brought in a whole other meeting of the importance of being part of a group, not to be isolated, to take care of your health. I think the full story of COVID is yet to be written. I think it's the biggest story since World War II. In terms of how this has affected society, social behavior, etc.
Yeah. So as you grow this, and when do the sponsors start coming to you as opposed to you going to the sponsors? When does it become something that people want to be part of as part of oh yeah, this would be a good idea to be part of.
So I could say
Our
pivot.
security dog is here, by the way. Come here, Vegas.
Okay, Vegas. I could say to you that I can remember one definitive moment when sponsors came to me, but I'll back up for a second. In 1997, a guy I used to play basketball with was named Jeff Shames, and he was the CEO of MFS Investment Management. And I approached him, and I'm going to answer your question, but you got to let me go back to go
You
forward.
go right ahead. You do what you want.
And MFS came into the PMC in a big way. They came in with riders, matching grants, sponsorship dollars, volunteerism. And when I said to Jeff, because this was frankly sponsorship, the last part I had developed with the PMC model. And quite frankly, I was much more about getting in-kind product than I was about getting dollars.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't perceived value to an amateur event that nobody won. I had to sort of make that connection, but this was again another epiphany. I said, Jeff, what do you want in the relationship? He said, I just want my brand to be associated with your brand because employees find it uplifting to see company values in something like the Pan Mass Challenge. And he was smart enough, because then I learned that the greatest thing you could ever do for a CEO is for post an event like the Pan Mass Challenge is for Jay to walk into his boss and say, thank you for sponsoring this. It meant a lot to me and my family. I love that where I work embraces these values. Boom. So I believe it was maybe 2008, but to literally take it, because no sponsors did not come to me. I went to them. But in 2008, two guys approached me at the Mass Maritime Academy. Rob DiMartini and Jose Alvarez. They were riders. I didn't know who they were. And they both came up and they says, we want to get involved. I said, well, that's great. Who are you? And, Martini says, I'm the CEO of New Balance. And Jose Alvarez says, I'm the CEO of Stop and Shop. So what did that teach me? Well, I'm a pretty good salesman, but ride this event. I've felt it for all 45 years. Ride this event. You'll get it. It's a living experience. It's not a one and out. I never designed it that it was supposed to be easy, physically, financially. I wanted skin in the game. And that lesson came to me from my Appalachian Trail trip, which I did in 1976, where I took 3 good friends, but I was looking to get out of a family job, and I said, "Good, this is going to be fun. I'll do all the work," and I did, partly because I was motivated. I wanted to leave my family business, and I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. They were. It didn't matter as much. So I thought, you do maybe what you do, like it's sort of like me, I'll pay for your ticket.
Yeah.
So I did the work. And, if you know anything about the Appalachian Trail, the first 110, we were starting in May 15th from the northern terminus at Mount Katahdin, which pre-climate change it's not even ice out until Memorial Day. So the lakes are frozen, there's snow everywhere. And to make a long story short, in that first 110 miles, it became a survival experience. We had a big blowdown. We had 8 straight days of nonstop rain. It's pre-cell phone, pre-long-term weather forecast. It was a disaster. When we got out of there, all 3 of them said, I quit. And I said, well, what do you mean you quit? It's only going to get better. I'm going to be any worse than what it was. We'd all lost 15 pounds. We had to ration food. All kinds of things happened. And 2 of them quit only to come back a week or so later, but one guy didn't quit. Dave Hellman, who later worked for me for 22 years, because he didn't want me to go on alone. The lesson learned was not so much that I was any tougher than these guys, but I'd done all the work. And it was just easier for them to quit. And it was harder for me to quit because I'd put all the food together, the route together, and get, all the logistics, and I was more committed. So in creating the Pan Mass Challenge, you didn't know me, but that's just, this will be fun. You got to do the work and shit will happen. And that's fun too, because that's my personality. We'll create a little good trouble and then we'll figure it out. It's who I was. It's kind of what the event was, but it tended to attract people who came and stayed. And I think, Jay, as you well know, yourself included, this has proven to be quite a formula over time. Was it tested? Yeah, by me on the Appalachian Trail. There was no sampling of figure out what demographic we're searching for. Obviously through the years, lots changed. I would say I remember my earliest memory of keeping records. We were like 82% male. Now it's like 54, 46%. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Women in the workplace, Title IX, our multiple starts. Sturbridge, Central Mass is still more heavily, it's probably like 65-35, male, female. But the one-day starts, the Babson-Wellesley start, allowed for greater variation of skill set. Even this day, I could laugh, the irony being 45 years older and that I've ridden every year. I go, God, it's a big time ride, 109 miles and 4,600 vertical feet. This is real. And I think it always was, but it was a lot easier for me as a younger man.
Yeah, somehow every year it seems to get longer. The hills seem to get higher.
Something like that. Well, I would say, I think you and I are probably actually pretty good, but the truth is the weather's gotten tougher. 2 of the last 3 years have been boredom. One was 100 degrees and dry, and last year was 92 and 100% humidity. I would take the 100 degree and dry. They're tough.
Coming up.
Well, a transition does have to happen because I've been told I'm not going to live forever.
How'd you handle that news?
Rough.
What's the future hold for the Pan Mass Challenge? Obviously 45 years, very successful. It is something from my standpoint that changed my life. It gave me a purpose. So thank you. And also just joining a cycling team, and people who watch this are mostly going to be people who know Pan Mass, they know cycling teams, but the team environment is great. And joining the Forza G, now I've had friends for a lifetime. And so as you're now just past 70, how does the transition happen? You've been the face.
Well, a transition does have to happen because I've been told I'm not going to live forever.
How'd you handle that news?
Rough. This time of year is particularly poignant when you're seeing all those shows, and it's something that myself, my wife, the PMC board deeply cares about. I will say this with all humility intact, and I don't like this discussion, knock on wood. If I were to pass tomorrow, this event will run. We've got a public trust. We are a well-oiled machine. We've got responsibility divided amongst 30 professional and volunteer professional head staff that are handling the logistics of the weekend. And, Jay, we're friends, but you don't ride for me. I never wanted anybody to ride for me. I don't see myself as that kind of leader. I see myself as the kind of leader who says, I've got stake in the game. I've never asked anyone to do what I wasn't willing to do. Yeah, I'm trying to keep a constant consciousness, and I think after how many years?
This will be 17.
17 for you, that I'm looking for you to register in January. I'm hoping you're getting out there and training. I hope you attend one of our special events, and I hope you set your sites up and you're using our technology to raise a lot of money, and typically you do. And our average two-day rider is raising over $12,000 for a $6,000 minimum. That's amazing, but that didn't happen overnight either. I don't think any of that goes away, even if I were. I'm looking for generational change. If you were to ask me the perfect zen of what this PMC can be, and you have your own particular way of doing it. I think you're riding a 3-day event. You've innovated like a lot of people do to get to PMC ownership of the weekend. You're coming from Williamstown. They're coming from New York City. They're coming from the Quebec border. I think it's great. But we have ownership of those 2 days. And, but for me, I see this, this could be $100 million weekend. So what does that mean? We're approaching the limits of what you can safely, intelligently do for the classic 2-day rides. But the Sunday rides have a lot of upside, numerically and financially. I think you have to look as a feeder system. I think you and I both know you're looking to get a first-year rider. They join your team. Perhaps they're getting the culture. They hopefully like you and your friends. And maybe they're financially or physically not ready for $6,000 and 200 miles. So they do the Sunday route. But in my gut, your gut, I expect, you give them a little taste of this weekend. They'll be the 2-day ride the following year. And even our data suggests that financially you achieve your potential in year 2 to 3. And I'd like to say if you're doing 20 grand, you're probably good for it almost every year. Obviously, there's variations in the curve. When you age out, you don't have a job, maybe you're not as able to ask other people. Maybe you're more in a position to write a bigger check. I don't know. But cycling in the PMC has attracted a very dynamic demographic. Furthermore, and I will circle back, but the 100% pass-through, which we've now achieved for 19 consecutive years, by which every fundraising dollar is going to that year's gift, this past year, which was $75 million, yet another record, yet over $1 billion. That 100% pass-through has shown to be, if not the secret sauce, the most important aspect. Literally, our surveys say that people care more about the 100% pass-through than they care about benefiting cancer research at Dana-Farber. Holy cow. I mean, it's this holy grail of allowing you to be aggressive and feeling good about yourself. that the PMC has found a way to underwrite its year-round operation and the weekend itself. Okay.
Well, what I'm curious about, because you've been so successful, Pan Mass has been wildly successful, and I think it's fascinating for somebody, well, like myself and all those people who ride, looking from the outside, looking in, and even those in nonprofits who are running nonprofits who want to be successful, they should look to the Pan Mass as a model. And it's just an interesting time where you have been the face. We have seen this in sports where sometimes it's hard to walk away. Or you have a CEO.
Like Biden.
You have a CEO like Jared.
Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah. But you have a CEO. So it's like, so I'm sitting back there like, okay, so if there's an issue internally at Pan Mass, do I go to Billy? Do I go to Jared? Like, which parent do I go to, right? And so who's calling the shots and those things? And I'm not looking for like to try and retire you here, but I'm fascinated in how successful you've been. Obviously, I say your name, somebody says Pan Mass, I say Pan Mass, somebody says your name, right? How, and just how are you seeing this go forward?
How am I seeing this going forward? Well, first of all, because speaking for myself, there's no beach or golf course that is more meaningful to me than the only child I ever created. Yeah. My 2 kids are adopted, So, and they're wonderful children, and I do love them. But, and now we've got a team of 15 people. Again, I brought Jared on 5-6 years ago, to support my work. And if I weren't here, I'm pretty comfortably can do it. But yeah, somewhere we're going to get generationally younger. This isn't McDonald's. I don't look at it this way. PMC is not infinite. My vision for the PMC is not that it should be in Houston or San Francisco or Miami. I do believe riding bikes for NCI Cancer Institute should be everywhere, and I've consulted on a dozen of them. But this isn't about McDonaldizing the PMC. It's about preserving something uniquely wonderful that every survey, year after year, until about 3, I read every single survey, probably about 2,500 per year, And typical survey, they would go, nitpick, 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 greatest weekend of my year. That's a typical PMC survey. They're so vested. You didn't put enough peanut butter on the sandwich. Like, it's almost humorous. But that on PMC weekend, we're creating something that nobody can do by themselves. I love this event in the 80s and 90s. I saw what it was. I saw this community being created, but the intimacy, and of course we were younger, so all nostalgia and stuff in place. That intimacy on a certain level has been replaced by something bigger, and that's a mass event of impeccable logistics with an 85% alumni base who are all ambassadors largely. That it demonstrates what human beings can actually achieve when they work together. It's palpable, and it's not lost on anybody. Then you got all this, love bombing that's going on between the rider and the volunteer, each population thinking that the other's the greatest. So this I want to go on. I'm a competitive guy. I don't think we've reached our potential, but neither do I think that the PMC is infinite. And as my role might evolve, no, I still intend on leading, strategic planning, mentorships, sales. You talk, you bring this on point about my mortality. Within 10 years, the second biggest revenue unit, yourself included, will be legacy. You feel this way about your college? Yeah. You did 4 years, maybe you were a slacker. You spent 6 years trying to stay in school. Who knows? But you're 17 years at the PMC. You're going to tell me this isn't a part of your life? part of your legacy. And so that I expect will add not only to the annual gift, but will ensure the 100% pass-through. I can tell you quite honestly that one of the rebounds out of COVID is everything's become more expensive. I'm sure we all have experienced that. And so I could say to you 2 challenges for the PMC annually: raising the annual gift, maintaining the 100% pass-through. And everybody wants both. So I see the way to that. I think the model is impeccable. I think it's hard for other people and nonprofits to do if they start. Some nonprofits all about like, let me get $1 million donor, and I'm going to spend $30,000 whining and dining that $1 million donor who knows that they're going to do the right thing in the end, but they want the attention. That ain't the PMC. That's just not who we are, My successor will be someone who walks the walk. He or she needs to be a front-facing person who has either ride and volunteered with this event, who's had skin in the game, who's going to be a younger generational change that everybody's going to root for. That's what matters. Guys like us can help. But, you go back at least as far, I think, as when Mike Andrews used to come. So here's the chairman of the Jimmy Fund. And we'd be doing our opening shows we do every year. And I'd hear older people catcalling to him, why aren't you riding? Why aren't you riding? I mean, this is how passionate people feel about the PMC. Skin in the game. I get skin in the game. Why don't you have skin in the game? I felt bad for Mike. I said, Mike, it's okay. You're a baseball player. You're a spoiled
second baseman,
Yeah.
So this year, what time we have left, what are we looking for this year? What do you want people to walk away with?
Well, we're saying goodbye to Sturbridge. That's a big deal. It was a great ride. I thank them. I think of all the, we probably had 5 different starting places in Sturbridge till we found a place that Sturbridge hosts. We're trading that in for a modern college campus. Massachusetts' second largest town. Quite frankly, probably greater alliances with that town. An opportunity to recruit more from Worcester, which has never been, ironically, a strong PMC recruiting place. And, it's the last ride, sort of savor, or say thank God, because the Worcester ride from Holy Cross will be 100 miles and 3,800 vertical. So about 700-800 less vertical feet. I think you and I both, that's a little apples and oranges. It's still a century ride, and in cycling parlance, that's a big day, but not as big a day as Sturbridge has been. And I think that's where the focus is, to do it well, to go out on top, get excited about the following year. But other than that, one other thing I absolutely should mention is the return of a brand new ship at the Mass Maritime Academy. We've had 3 different ships through the years, but we've been without a ship for 5 years. And if it is there and not deployed to a world emergency, we can lodge 700 riders in air-conditioned comfort with showers and rooms of 2, 4, 8, 12, 20. This is by far the most exciting amenity the PMC has offered since, I'm going to have to think about finishing that sentence. Comfort's not what we do. We do ROI and feeling good about yourself. You can
sleep on Sunday night, I know.
Yeah. You'll eventually get home to your own bed.
Oh. Thank you for coming on. We could talk another 12 hours, but I really appreciate it. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure, Jack. Thank you.
One Big Boat is a production of Last Minute Productions Incorporated. This episode was produced by me, Jay Dovek. Ethan Gallo was the sound engineer. Jim Johnson provided production support. And Ryan Macheski was our show editor. Joanne Pilata was the production coordinator.